I still remember the day like it was yesterday. My land, my pride, overrun with wedding decorations and a fancy gazebo I never even saw coming. A day when I had to choose between letting a horde of strangers trample my legacy or taking drastic action. And the moment when I gave Karen Maddox a warning that would shake the very foundation of Silver Ridge Estates. My name is Jake Callahan, and I run Callahan Ranch, a humble 8-acre sanctuary passed down through generations. And believe me, nothing ever prepared me for the shock of finding a full-blown wedding setup right in the middle of my alfalfa field. It started with folding chairs strewn about, fairy lights dangling from every structure, and a white gazebo standing proud as if it belonged to me, all while guests in suits and gowns strolled across my land like they owned every blade of grass. I was hauling some feed one ordinary Friday when a sleek black SUV pulled into my driveway, and out stepped Karen Maddox, the snobbish new president of Silver Ridge Estates HOA, accompanied by 2 board members, Susan and Neil. They handed me a flyer announcing a major community event on July 23rd at what they called Callahan Pasture Overlook. I stared at that flyer, disbelief and anger churning in my gut. "This is my land," I barked, "and no one asked me." Karen, with that glittery air about her and clutching her wineglass, simply smiled and said it was for the mayor's daughter's wedding. A very important event, she claimed, and a gesture of community spirit. I told her in no uncertain terms, "Either you clear out right now or I'm calling in my demolition crew." And just like that, the tension was set. The day of the wedding arrived, and I woke up early, expecting nothing more than a quiet day tending to the goats and replanting sunflowers. But as I stepped outside, my jaw dropped. The once pristine fields were transformed into a party venue. Cars were parked haphazardly along the dirt path, vibrant banners and streamers lined up, and a crowd of people in their best attire were mingling near what used to be my peaceful barn. I couldn't believe my eyes. Strangers were laughing, taking photos, and even a photo booth had been set up near the horse stable. My heart pounded as I stormed out, demanding to know who had authorized this blatant invasion of my property. Karen, still with that condescending smile, tried to explain that the HOA had some shared access rights to community areas. "This isn't a community park," I shot back, my voice rising with every word. "This is my ranch, my home." Before I could even finish my plea, Karen's tone turned dismissive as she explained that my land was supposedly part of some grand community plan. I felt my blood boil. How dare they use my land as a backdrop for a wedding without so much as a courtesy call? I grabbed my phone and phoned my old buddy Derek Young, now the owner of a local demolition company, and told him to be on standby. I couldn't let them disrespect all those years of hard work and my father's legacy. Within the hour, the rumble of a yellow bulldozer echoed across the ranch, and the sight of it barreling down the gravel path sent the wedding guests into a frenzy. I can still hear the shriek of a dropped champagne glass as the machine's claw lifted high, poised to strike the unauthorized gazebo. Just then, Sheriff Miles rolled in with his cruiser, trying to restore order as Karen's polished demeanor began to crumble. "Jake, what in the world are you doing?" Karen demanded, her voice trembling as she saw the clear determination in my eyes. "This isn't just an event. This is trespassing on private land, and I won't stand for it." I remember standing there, breathing heavy, as I stared down at the chaos unfolding before me. The bulldozer idling, the guests in stunned silence, and the atmosphere hanging between outrage and disbelief. In that moment, the first twist hit. Amidst all the commotion, I remembered something I had almost forgotten. Late one evening a few weeks before, I'd noticed some unusual tire tracks near my back gate and pieces of masking tape marking off areas in my field. Now it all fell into place. The HOA's covert operation, their underhanded plan to use my land without permission, and more shockingly, a clause hidden in my father's old property records. For years, I had quietly maintained my ranch as a sanctuary, a piece of family heritage that was untouchable by the stringent rules of Silver Ridge Estates. My father had once told me, "Respect the soil that feeds you," and I swore to myself I'd honor that legacy. But Karen, oh, Karen, she had been pushing the boundaries since she arrived. From fining me for painting my barn in what she deemed a non-neutral red, to boldly orchestrating this entire wedding fiasco, she never hesitated to trample over my rights. And now, as the bulldozer's claw paused mid-swing, the evidence of unauthorized intrusion and property violation was clear for all to see. While the chaos ensued at the wedding, I took a moment to retreat inside, catching my breath and mulling over my next move. I pulled out an old, dust-covered file from a filing cabinet that had belonged to my dad. There, tucked between faded blueprints and handwritten notes, I found something that made my stomach churn. A property agreement signed with a company called Redbird Holdings, specifying that a particular section of my land, Parcel 9, was designated for natural resource study and was absolutely off-limits for any development or public event. This wasn't just about an unauthorized wedding. It was about a violation of sacred family terms, a deliberate move by the HOA, and worse, a potential land grab to force me out of the picture once and for all. By the time the sheriff managed to calm the crowd and Karen's frantic explanations dwindled into mere whispers, I knew I had to act. I got in touch with my lawyer, Todd Belson, a sharp fellow who'd always had my back. I laid out everything, the flyer, the unauthorized modifications on my property, the property records. Todd's reaction was swift and decisive. "Jake, this is huge. Not only are we looking at trespassing and property damage, but there's fraud involved here." My anger simmered into a cold determination. I wasn't going to let them get away with this, no matter the price. At the subsequent emergency HOA meeting, held in a glass-paneled community hall that reeked of pretension, I stormed in, wearing nothing more than my worn work boots and a faded flannel shirt, a stark contrast to the polished attire of the board members. The room was thick with tension, and Karen tried to take control, accusing me of reckless behavior and endangering community guests. I could see the doubts flickering across many faces in the crowd. Taking a deep breath, I stepped up to the podium and calmly laid out the evidence, the property agreement, the names behind Redbird Holdings, and even a series of emails hinting at a secret deal between Karen and someone in Pinnacle Systems. My voice was steady but carried a bitter edge. And as I read out the details, the room fell into a stunned silence. A murmur began to ripple through the gathered residents, and even one of the board members, Neil Harrow, couldn't help but speak up in a shaky tone. "I always suspected something was off. Karen never mentioned that Parcel 9 was off limits." The words hung in the air like a verdict. I watched Karen's face drain of color as the evidence forced her hand. With every document I revealed, the facade of the HOA crumbled further. I realized then that this wasn't just a battle for my land, it was a fight against an entire system that had long overstepped its bounds, threatening the legacy of every person who dared to call Silver Ridge their home. Yet, even as the meeting's atmosphere grew electrified with the promise of accountability, the ultimate twist came. A few days later, while sorting through more old files in my father's study, I discovered a handwritten note tucked into the margins of an old map. It mentioned that Parcel 9 was rich in rare minerals, scandium to be precise, a metal so valuable it could change the future of technology and defense. That note, combined with the evidence of fraudulent land use, confirmed that Karen and the mayor, yes, Mayor James Denton, whose name was now intertwined with scandal, had hatched a devious plan to seize my land and convert it into a commercial venture under the guise of community development. They were willing to risk everything, manipulating regulations and forging deals, all to get their hands on those valuable mineral rights. The next morning, with fresh proof in hand, and the support of neighbors like Neil and even the remorseful bride, Emma Denton, I contacted Todd again. We prepared to fight back, not just in the court of public opinion, but in the legal arena. My heart pounded as I watched the unfolding drama, a blend of personal betrayal and systemic corruption. The community, once divided, now rallied around me, demanding that Karen and her cohorts be held accountable. Meanwhile, a threatening letter arrived at my door, scrawled in all caps with the ominous message, "Back off or else." It was meant to intimidate, to force me into submission, but instead it only steeled my resolve further. I spent the following days gathering every shred of evidence: photos of ruined decorations, footage of the bulldozer in action, copies of the incriminating emails, and the old mineral rights documents. I even visited the county records office, where the clerk revealed that Redbird Holdings had been nothing more than a shell company, founded by none other than Mayor Denton himself. The puzzle pieces fell into place with a sickening clarity. This wasn't a simple case of an unauthorized wedding. It was a full-blown land grab, powered by greed, deception, and the abuse of HOA authority. At last, I reached the moment of reckoning. Armed with undeniable evidence and the backing of the community, I stood once again at a crowded HOA meeting, ready to drop the final bombshell. I revealed the complete dossier, every fraudulent contract, every manipulated document, and watched as Karen's smug expression disintegrated into panic. The room erupted. Neighbors demanded justice, board members questioned their allegiances, and even the sheriff looked on, realizing that he was witnessing the collapse of an empire built on lies. In that charged moment, I declared, "This is your last chance to come clean, or face the consequences." The finality in my voice left no doubt. The power had shifted, and justice was finally within reach. As I stepped out into the cool evening air, the chaos of the meeting still echoing in my ears, I couldn't help but feel a bittersweet mix of relief and uncertainty. I had reclaimed my land and exposed the corruption at its roots. But I knew deep down that the battle was far from over. There would be legal skirmishes, lingering threats, and the constant reminder that greed never sleeps. Still, I stood there, exhausted yet resolute, vowing never to let them trample my legacy ever again. Justice or just revenge?